So, as Manan mentioned, my research has been on learning process, how knowledge is created. That has been my focus, and I want to really, thank whoever that I happened to study in a design school, and I think only because I studied design that I was able to understand the real learning process of children. So what I'm now going to present to you on reimagining the modern educational paradigm based on three things. One, all of us, our input in design education. Second, my research on how children learn. And third is on how actually artisans and non-literate communities really understand the world. So this is the has been my research. And of course, parallelly, I've also been researching on how damaging modern schooling is all about. It's cognitive damages, spiritual damages, cultural damages. I mean, it's very strange that that people have not really paid attention to this so far. I mean, after all this talks about critical learning and all these terminologies that modernity creates, yet we get fixed onto a framework and doesn't dare to come out of that and really relook at what really constitutes learning. So I will do a formal presentation I have prepared specially for this. So, let me just start my screen sharing and yeah. So I have also been quite interested in many attempts that has been happening to address the issue of not just regular education but also higher education. So very keenly following what has been happening. So the presentation is basically on. Also, this will be extremely important for design students because. I think the real potential of design education, if we are really able to address it, is for self-transformation. Other things are secondary. This is what I feel, because really the context, the condition, the content, all that, if we can really look at it, design education premise can become a fantastic possibility for really transformation of our for our being actually. So what I'm going to talk about is from transferring information to creating knowledge, from learning the word to learning the world. See, this is something that I came across when I started living with rural tribal people, illiterate people. Suddenly it stuck to me that literates learn the word, whereas illiterates learn the world. So this was a very, very important, shift in my perception. And, it really enabled me to see things in a very, very different perspective. And then teaching paradigm to learning paradigm. So now my own experience, let me just give you, shortly about my experience. See, studying at NIT was extremely important for me, doing my post-graduation. Till then, I was in a teaching paradigm. So I distinguish between learning paradigm and teaching paradigm. And teaching paradigm is what we have normally, even in today's design and architectural schools, more or less it's a teaching paradigm. So it is about an expert having knowledge, transferring that, that's a regular thing. Even now, homes have been turned into a teaching environment where parents are busy teaching. NIT experience at NIT was fantastic. This was in 1984, 85, around that time. Hardly anybody was teaching, no policing, no compulsion, but everybody was learning. So this was a fantastic kind of a environment where wherever you see, you find people who are deeply interested in something or the other. So this was my, starting point for, a starting point where I began to really inquire into, what all is happening in the name of education. So let me give you a gist of what is modern education. How to teach children is the question we asked. And this is a story till now, ready-made knowledge is being fed onto them. I would call it linguistic data, and we call it physics, chemistry, different names. These are tag names actually. And then inputs, continuous inputs, and then you measure in outputs, by various clicks, and then you grade them and send them to IITs and NITs. Higher the grade, you go into IITs, then, so this is the drama that we have been on. And there is an interesting twist now in the story. They have brought in artificial intelligence to replace the teachers. So, ready-made knowledge, digital data is being again top-down approach, input, and this more alienation from life's processes. And this is a continuation of our question, how to teach children. Now, there is one interesting twist in the AI related field. See, the machine learning, it was approached the way we were teaching children, input and output. Now, the new challenge that has been taken up is machines that can learn on their own. So actually, the interesting paradox is that artificial intelligence is developed by learning how children learn, and that is used for dumping children down, So this is a very interesting kind of a situation. I followed it up and I found that in the last few years, there has been tremendous research on how children learn. And this is done in MIT, Harvard, and so many institutions are involved. And these are all collective and group work. And the purpose of this is not to repair schools, not to create interesting schools. This is only for developing artificial intelligence. So I want to share a video with you. Let me just give me 1 minute. Let me share the sound. Yeah. Why is it refusing to move? Okay.
One can look at the story of computer science and think we have at least 3 ages. One is the age of programmers. In the age of programmers, you have to pay very smart people quite a lot of money to make some system behave in an intelligent way. We are now in the age of labelers, in which you pay a lot of people not much money in order to label data. And both of them, especially this one is n going to infinity, number of labeled data going to infinity. But of course, children don't have big data. We really would like to be able to show one car and one plane to a child, like we do for a child, and then they're able immediately to generalize very well. So our ideal is n going to 1, and to have computers that learn like children from experience.
So finally, they are telling that children learn from experience, and yet our education has changed, not a bit. We are willing to change there. So our choice is whether we should learn from AI how to teach, or whether we also should learn from children how to learn. I mean, this is the question that the so-called educated should ask now. So let's do an audit of modern education, destruction of traditional wisdom knowledge systems, destruction of knowledge creation, meaning process of creating knowledge is completely gone out. Only 10% of this educated are producing knowledge today, and that too for commercial purpose. The rest are involved in distributing knowledge as a product. Total absence of existential sustainable knowledge for the well-being of life. Total alienation, destruction of sensitivity and subtlety. So this is the sum total of the result of modern education. And then there is this new nonsense that people keep talking about, 21st century skills. Of the same nonsense, same approach, without ever considering that we are all autonomously, biologically equipped to learn. So, see, I have been involved in research which is to ask this question, how children learn. So there are 2 paradigms of research. Whole modern paradigm, which is based on, which the teaching is based, schooling is based, is by researching on how to teach children. So what is interesting is that when the question will naturally give you the kind of answers So how to teach children will give you what to teach, when to teach, how much to teach, how often, all that. This is the question that will generate. Whereas the moment you ask how children learn, there's a shift in paradigm. What children learn, how they learn, what is the content, why do they learn? A completely different series of questions then turn up. I wonder why we are not asking this question. Why is that all of us are only involved in finding out how to teach them? So there is as I told you, studying design education was extremely important because this is what connected me. First of all, made me understand the fact that children learn and the relation I found between these two. So design education is actually from learning the word to learning the world, from known to the unknown, from conditioning to awakening. I'm talking about the potential. Even now, it's not being addressed. So the first thing a design education should do is to immediately learn from children what is the process by which creation of knowledge actually takes place. So this is another important aspect of design education. It actually gives an opportunity for creation of knowledge, unlike any other subjects. And of course, there's a shift in mind to body, teaching to learning, dependence to autonomy. See, the speciality of design education is that it's experience-based, exploration is there, creativity is there. Our senses function, we are engaging with the world, and to some extent, autonomy is respected. And design education, I feel, is one of the best liberal arts education in one sense, because there's a seamless integration of various subjects. Beauty, and again, I'm mentioning not art, science, technology, communication, software. So there is a whole possibility of design education being a key role in reimagining both the higher education and the regular schooling system, and so it's like this. Children also, when they make sense, it is through experience, exploration, creativity, exactly what design education provides, and it's a senses, world, and autonomy. So, and modern education is not about experience, exploration, and creativity. It's about reading, reasoning, storing information. It's not about senses, world, autonomy. It's about mind, text, and authority. So I would like to, to the participants, just ask one or two questions. You can just hold it in your mind. You don't have to answer right now. What is the color of sky? Just imagine that and store it. What is the color of leaf? Okay, just hold that. That's it. So there is a cognitive rewiring that happens in modern education because knowledge precedes knowing. We don't create knowledge, and analysis instead of creativity, autonomy replaced with dependence, and mind numbs and distorts the senses. But our design education is not really addressing any of these issues, because as you can see, that the aesthetic sense that we are learning is nothing but just the Western, culture produced sense of sensibilities. Design process is turned into a method, and the height of that is that today even design schools are teaching design thinking. Design thinking is actually a formula which I think should be rejected by in the education process, because formulas doesn't have any role in designers' approach to creation. So this is a tragedy that is happening all over design schools. Design thinking had got into a subject. I don't know why, because all that 3 years I thought you were only doing that. So I don't know why this became suddenly a subject. So Western cultural context is reestablished, and fragmented and compartmentalized subjects, and teaching from books quite often. So these are the basic issues that we need to address. And I feel that foundation is that period, is that 1 year. I mean, it's also okay if you extend it to some more time. But this is, I think, the most crucial thing to understand, rethinking foundation, because, this rethinking foundation should be based on how actually children create their cognitive foundation naturally. So this has been my 30 years of research as to how actually children create their cognitive foundation, enable the tools that create knowledge, and develop processes that are meant for creating knowledge. So it's a whole a new process. Of course, this is what the MIT scientists are now trying to understand. So the most important thing is that human beings are biologically equipped to learn the real world, create knowledge autonomously. But education makes us to depend on external authority, turn us into analysis of second-hand information. Now, what happens is that anybody who has been studying or some interest or some exposure to brain studies would know that our brain is shaped by what we engage with. So right from childhood, when we become analysis of second-hand information, our brain then gets stuck to becoming a analyzer. And so this is a very interesting thing. I feel that learning, again, a completely misunderstood idea. It's a two-way process, actually. I would again ask you one or two questions and then maybe later come back to that. I want to ask you, who taught you cycling? Who taught you how to make chapati? Or who taught you swimming? Just think about this for some time, and then maybe once the thing is over, I can explain this to you why I asked these questions. So when we engage with the word, written word installs, helps, develops these habits in us, which is two-dimensional habits, which are the activity that we do is that reading, thinking, reasoning, agreeing, disagreeing, imagining, reading, and more the same. So this is what we do. Creation of a virtual two-dimensional space. So our mindset is linear, fragmented, sequential, and compartmentalized. Whereas when you engage with the real world demands a different cognitive system to understand three-dimensional skills, sensing, experience, alertness, observation. So there's a completely new possibility that world actually gives you. And understanding happens in self-organization. Unlike what you do with word is to use reasoning to create an illusion that you have understood. And this is actually simultaneous, holistic, multisensory, and multimodal. So I actually came across this because during the real potential in children, while doing a workshop in 2003, I found that children were creating absolutely beautiful stuff with no teaching at all. I mean, I never actually, right from the beginning, I have never involved in any kind of teaching. I always created an environment for learning to happen. But this was absolutely surprising for me because children were actually creating absolutely beautiful stuff. 10, 11, 8, 9, that kind of age-old children. This is what actually made me relook at them and began my journey in this. So let me just give you some amount of, some exposure to that, but we would require some amount of redefinitions. Our present definitions do not allow us to understand any of this. So bear with me, please get into this. What I mean by learning is creation of knowledge. It's not a result of teaching, but how does creation of knowledge take place? And learning is a two-way process, as I told you, because what you learn in turn shapes you. And creativity, now what has happened is that creativity has been hijacked by so-called creative professions. But actual creativity is in response to the unknown. Any action that one does in response to unknown is creativity. Curiosity is embedded in all living beings. It's not to be given to anybody. So an interesting video that shows that every living being is curious, know what is happening all around. So it's nothing anthropocentric. It's nothing human-centric. Yeah. And questioning, again, our notion of questioning is in the realm of language. When a child touches something and explore it, that is a question and an answer being executed. Play again has been totally misunderstood. Playfulness is a quality in children. See, this is a very interesting thing to look at how children are playful and what is the process of creation of toys. This child took a bite of a coconut piece. Immediately, he compared that shape to the bull, Nandi bull, the horns, and then he changed it to the moon, the half moon. So this is a very, very interesting process of comparison of how things look alike. So this is also the principle that children use in making toys. So play is the reenactment of experience by recreating and reliving experience. So play again is totally misunderstood by modernity. And toy is the object that is used as props in the process of reenactment of experience. Any object that has some kind of resemblance to the original object is recreated in that context. So actually they don't need toys at all. In fact, when you give a toy, you're destroying a total natural cognitive process. This is a child one time, it was a bus, it was for sitting, so the children doesn't have that fixed idea that this is a toy to be used only for this. As I told you, ready-made toys are more dangerous than schools. Imagination is another totally misunderstood idea in modernity, because we read and imagine. Unlike children, natural imagination is imagination of something concrete. So what we have is what I call as imaginary imagination. So these stones are imagined as their children. So the child is a concrete thing. That is what they imagine. 2 combs has become an aeroplane. So what we do is that from process orientation, from creation of knowledge, from being present, by being in quality, we shifted to product orientation, belief in knowledge, absence, and quantity. So this is the gift of modernity and modern education. So I will just show you some 2-3 videos on how children learn. Number 1 is that without senses, no learning can take place. And now you can think about what sense we have used in our schools. Senses have been completely denied in our schooling paradigm. Look at the observation that the child continuously does. Child will now try to climb, but again and again going back. And this is my next video is the most important video I have, because that is the crux of learning actually. Look at what the older child is doing and comparing. This is actually the crux of learning. Please understand this. Your whole sensorial cognitive foundation is built based on, comparing each and every experience. Now this child will bless you, please take, because children are our solution actually. If we understand children, we can rewire the whole system actually. Take his blessing. Thank you very much. Bless all these people also who have come. Now, I would like to show you what I call as natural pedagogy. Natural pedagogy is teaching without teaching. This is another very interesting video. This is what actually happens in a rural tribal area. That the adult does what they want to do, and children observe and learn. The adult has no intention to teach. That is because learning is absolutely natural. Learning is not a choice, learning is natural. You see, children in Bangalore slums learn 4 languages by the time they reach 4 years. It's not because of teaching, because the environment had the possibility of learning. So I will also like to, now this is also very key important thing for a designers to understand, especially the foundation period, because this is exactly what we engage with: form, function, process, material, structure, relationship, and context. If you actually look at whatever children do spontaneously and naturally without any help, this is precisely what children do to understand the real world. Now, form means the way things are seen. I'm sure all of you must have done this thing, when you caught the book as in your childhood, you must have kept the book like this and called it house, So why do everybody does this? Second is, look at this, so interesting. I was actually working on my computer. This child came in, she saw this greeting card, immediately turned it into a laptop. Immediate study of form, exploration of form. Now, this is very interesting. The market they had created, each and every object resembled the actual thing. And what was interesting was that when there was no bengan, that shape was not available, they replaced it with the flower, and chili with hibiscus. There's another interesting way in which, in this case, they compared the comparative sizes. This is the father and mother standing, and now they are lying down. Function. I'm sure this also all of you must have done it. Put bed sheet over a table and call that this is a house. So here we are exploring the space, the function that of the house, which is actually the space that it provides. And the process is how you make things. So children are constantly involved in making things. Quality. Now this is another very important thing. I'm sure all of you must have seen when children sit on a sofa, they start bouncing. Why do all children bounce on a sofa? So this is a very interesting video I came across.
For this.
Yeah. So this actually what I was telling was that on this chair, the possibility that the chair was giving was to slide. So immediately children sat on it and started sliding.
Huh.
So the way children are able to immediately respond to material is what is a very, very important thing to understand. See, our material understanding is very, very imposed understanding. That's why I'm telling this. For example, when especially you look at ceramic department, almost everybody has been taught the method of doing, and it's actually teacher has given 4 methods and 4 tools, and everybody is using that. But the moment you stop teaching and allow the clay to teach you how to respond, there's a completely different relationship and authenticity that you establish. And then anything and everything can become a tool then, and the clay will then tell you. So I was purposely asking earlier about who taught you how to make chapati and who taught you cycling and all that. So because normally people would say it is their father, mother, coach or somebody, but if you look very carefully, that the cycling can only be taught by cycle, because the ability to balance is what is embedded in the cycle. So how to make chapati is taught by atta, how to swim is taught by water. Exactly like that, learning has to be completely re-understood as a direct process of engaging with what we are learning about or learning from. So structure, what I mean is that they establish finally, now this is part of the school that I, 3 years ago that I ran a school. So by the 3rd year, they were making double-story buildings, big size. And as I was mentioning that this doesn't happen in a linear way. There's a simultaneity to many of these things. So this is interesting that this child has made his own house. The space is there, exploration of material take place. So how children learn is they experience the whole and explore the parts, and the natural reintegration takes place. So I will also quickly show you one of our very, very important research, which is drawing, actually, the real potential of drawing. So the way I look at this is that, experience through playful exploration, through recreation of experience, that is by what we call as play and toy, children understand the real world in terms of 3-dimensionality. But drawing is recreation of experience in 2-dimensional space. So drawing is a very, very important thing to understand in the present context of where 2-dimensional experience is something that we are engaging every time. So this was a fantastic, research that we did. Well, this turned out to be like that. It's not that we did any purposeful research. We began to study what children do spontaneously and without any help. And by decoding that, we were able to understand the real structure and the process and the method in which children understand the real world. So drawing basically is a cognitive activity. And you can see the correlation in how drawing resembles, the stages in drawing resembles other developmental stages in talking, walking, So basically it's an adaptive activity, which means it's a biological activity that children do with biological element is present. So scribbling can be called as the crawling stage of drawing or the babbling stage of drawing. And observation is, something that they do. So now you can see the progress in one-line drawing to 3-dimensionality. So you can see very clear stages in this. Then from word to a story, how from from babbling one sound, how does it grow into? So that's exactly same kind of approach, process you can see in the. But one very important thing to keep in mind is that the difference, fundamental difference between modern education and natural learning is that in natural learning, the content is always the same. The content is your experience. It is the fine tuning of your understanding is what increases. The same subject, the depth and width of the same subject keep on refining. Whereas in modern education, you have different subjects, and most of it has been now forgotten also. But in this case, there is a very integral way of connecting with each other. The connection is never left, because we don't know what is, I remember once a child was asked, what is the smallest thing? So child is then asking back, are you asking the question from a physics subject or a chemistry subject? Because both of these people have told, biology also have told what is the smallest thing, So the child is in complete confusion. So now you can see how words to story, how very complex things children attempt. But this is because you don't interfere at all. That's a very, very important thing which I'm again and again stressing. Even the word art would completely mislead them, because there is no concept of art in children. Art is a modern construct. The only activity children try to do is to understand the world. This is imagination. So I know, so these are all very deep study. I will just give you possibility, I won't take too much time. Exploring form, exploring process. These are, wiper being explored. So my redefinition of drawing is that drawing is the process invented by children as an adaptive process to make sense of the three-dimensional world in terms of two-dimensional space. This is a biological adaptation. So the less you interfere, the child's foundation would be completely, based on life's intent to learn, life's design of how learning should take place. Aesthetics, this is again completely misunderstood. This is a very important thing to understand, because all designers and architects all over the world are making exactly the same kind of stuff, because every input is from Bauhaus, Ulm, or, a similar kind of thing. There is no authentic input in this. And the tragedy of this is that whenever we talk about authenticity, immediately we think of, in the context of India, we will think of Bharata and people like that. No, I'm not talking about that also. Authenticity means right now, how do we use our senses and understand things? This is not referring some Vedas and past books that I'm talking about. Any book, any second-hand information is harmful, whether it is Veda or, whether it is a Western knowledge system. Because we are all capable of connecting with the same knowledge, which is existential, which is natural, which is available to us without any money to be paid. Because the whole role of function, the role of senses is to make sense. That is all what that is required. Of course, it requires depth. It requires a tapas-like kind of an involvement. It can't be casual. It can't be passing exam. There is no way you can understand anything from that approach. It has to be a total involvement. So aesthetics, as I told you, is a completely misunderstood one. From a biological thing, it's understood in a very psychological idea. Is the sound still shared? Let me just, because I want to share one or two videos with you. So sometimes it stops moving. Okay. So the function of beauty is for internal organization and external organization. I would like to share with you one very, very interesting video. Look at this girl who is sitting there. Look at her action, what he does spontaneously. Now, watch now. So what is prompting her to organize this? I'm sure this is not something that teacher teaches or anybody teaches. So there is an internal need within us. It's a biological response to organize things in a certain way, but not in a mechanical way. And you can also see that even the other child took part in this activity. So what I'm telling is that These are biological principles which we are not trying to understand. So to me, composition is something when the effort in seeing is the least. When we say something is beautiful, the amount of cognitive effort on the eye is minimum. If there is clutter, it doesn't please your eye. Why are these beautiful? Because it's organized in a certain way in which the cognitive ease is the result. And this is another very important thing that I've been documenting. Why is this so natural? You're not making music. Why is that when everybody does spontaneous things, why there is rhythm? I mean, I have several videos of this. I just want to, some examples of this. And every sphere of life, you will see these kind of things getting repeated, an urge for order, an urge for rhythm, which are not psychological. See, this is to be understood because modernity is responding from the mind. It's all mind's need, which neglecting that there is a body which is far more rooted in and far more understanding of what should happen actually. So these are some houses in some tribal areas. Here again, the difference is that we do something and think of beauty as a later thing to be added on. It's not an integral act. Again, you look at the way we have fragmented everything into beauty as a later thing, value education, which came much later. Now there is this silly term that now every designer is using. I'm purposely telling this, empathy. That's a new term that everybody is now trading. These are all trading terms. I think we should engage with it much more sincerely to understand this. Don't become marketeers of these silly terms that West keeps producing. Design thinking, critical thinking, empathy. Empathy suddenly came up, just maybe 6-7 years. Then everybody is on that bandwagon now. And then we also call we are greatly, great culture. I don't understand this contradiction between when Indians claim they are great culture, yet do everything that the West does without any shame, just copying them. So I'm really enjoying this. Look at this. So what is actually required is from conditioning to awakening, because all of us are potentially genuine. What I mean by genius is actually to be genuine, to be original, to be authentic. This is our nature. And I'm also not talking about spirituality. This is what every child is born with. This is what most rural tribal people are. This is what most uneducated people are. It's only through education that we create all the problems in the modern world, because we alienate us from our biological roots. And this is a very key thing to understand, paradigm of the unknown and paradigm of the known. Because this is a possibility that design education gives. This is the possibility of a condition of indigenous communities. Because there is no teaching, two kinds of things happen. Paradigm of unknown, what gives is that unknown shapes your value system based on humility and wonder. Because you don't know anything. The only thing you do is to just watch. And the cognitive system based on senses, body, and experience. And no teaching as a condition develops value system based on openness, collaboration, and cooperation. And a cognitive system based on playful exploration, discovery, intelligence, and open-ended processes, and being autonomous. I think autonomy is the key word that one must understand. Without autonomy, there is no, human being. So just I'm kind of summing up now. Learning is natural. Curiosity is life-given. To learn means to create knowledge. To learn means to shape oneself. The context is the content, the world, and not the word. Language is used for articulation and communication and not for cognition. So this is the key shift that one must understand, that through language, we can only create notions, illusions about knowledge. So design education, this, I think the fundamental shift that is required is from it has to move into an attitude. It has to be a transformational process, not as some theory or some rule formula that one picks up, So rethinking foundation is reorientation of content, process, pedagogy, and ambience. And from quantity to quality, Unlearning, learning to see, which means, you know, you making use of senses, recovering your natural cognitive process, and ability to create knowledge. This is actually very, very important thing to understand. How do we create knowledge? You know, and learning to be. So these are, you know, so, all right, you can pick up this if you feel like, my contact, and because I'm actually quite keen that more and more people join in this exploration of coming together and creating a interesting, you know, collaboration for really deeply learning and, you know, involved in many, many questions that are coming up in this process. So thank you very much. I've, you know, ran a marathon because I wanted to finish it fast so that there may be some time for oh, I did a good job actually, no? 12:22.
Sir, should we open the floor for questions?
Yes, yes, yes.
So you did ask in the beginning that you know what is the color of the sky and what is the color of the leaf?
Yes, yes. You see, normally when you ask this question, most educated people, I have tried it in engineering colleges, architecture, design, you know, final year design, usually all of them answer blue color. And for leaf, they give me green color.
Yeah.
You know, I remember once we were sitting in an architectural college, and the open windows, you know, you can see the sky right there, but nobody was looking out. Nobody had the, you know, the blue is very clear. But, you know, the same question was asked in a classroom, in a, you know, to children, about 8, 9-year-old, you know. So they asked back, what time of the day are you talking about? Now, an educated person, even if they are designers, they will try to become smart by telling it is some other color. They will not ask a question, what time of the day are you talking about? This is a crucial difference between an educated person and children. Children are present. We are absent. We are responding from absence. We are responding from a ready-made knowledge. You know, so this is the key aspect that I wanted to, you know, bring out, that this being present is the nature of a learner. Being observant, being attentive to what is happening around. And that is the only thing that is required to be a true learner.
So we have received a few questions, sir. If you, sure, they must be visible to you also in the Q&A.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. I've seen that. Can I read and then answer? That may be better,
yes,
no?
sir. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Can digital learning ever replace the physical learning? In that case, what will be the consequences? No, you see, I am not against books nor digitality. My primary concern is that should these tools control the way you think and you function, or you should be in control? That's the simple question I'm asking. You see, the text, I'll give you how the text is controlling you. As I told you, the linear sequential, fragmented mindset comes to us because we are engaging in a linear fragmented sequential manner. So it is actually the structure, the nature of the text, the written text, that is now wiring the way how we should function. I tell you another interesting example. You have traveled to Delhi, you have traveled to Kanyakumari. I'm asking the other participants also. You know, in down Kerala, you say, na, down south you have traveled, up north you have traveled, correct? Going to Delhi or coming to Kerala. Now, for an educated person, going to Delhi or going to Kerala means either coming down or going up. Am I right? Is this the way you're constructing in your head? Is that true? So without your knowledge, you have created a virtual vertical space inside, and you're not even aware of it. So actually what happens is that, all this cognitive, when there is a cognitive rewiring, it creates a certain kind of a matrix within you. And your thought process, everything is controlled. You don't even aware of it. You're not even aware of it. Absolutely not aware. But when you're engaging with the real world, because our systems are made for that, we then awaken to our possibility and then learn that. Now what happens with the text is that text has made a complete shift in the realm of language. From oral and hearing, it has now shifted to eyes and hands. It's writing, reading. So it completely shifted, which means our biology itself has changed. Now there is what they're telling is that literacy and all that has created a separate, area in the brain. It's called letterbox, by the way, and its whole process is very different. That is why we have a completely different approach. The whole modern people have a different beingness because they are not awakened by life itself. They are awakened by a dead material called text, a frozen ready-made book or an expert. So when you engage with the real thing, for example, when you are looking at the sky, you will never answer it, because that question itself is absurd. What is the color of sky is an absurd question, first of all, without mentioning exact time, because that presence. So what happens with a digital tool is that the same kind of problem then happens actually. So the thing is that are you able to create a cognitive wiring as per nature and then use these things as your tools? It shouldn't control you. Can you now read a book? For example, how do people read? They agree, they disagree. See, the educated person doesn't know how to hold a question. They have to agree or disagree. They are shaped into an argumentative kind of mode. Whereas an actual inquiry into anything has no place for arguments. It is observation. True knowledge is perception. It's not arguments. But whole modern knowledge system is based on argumentative, this thing. So what text does is to completely change our experience, our way of being. Everything is changed. So it's very important that understand all these are tools to understand the real world. See, there's a very interesting Zen koan, or a saying that it's like this, the finger pointing to the moon. The finger pointing to the moon. So in our case, finger is the word, moon is the world. But what has happened to modern educated people is that they are staying with the word and assuming that is the world. They have forgotten that it is about the real world that we are engaging with. But this judgment, the structuring of the brain, when it happens to a children, they are not at all in a critical stage. They cannot do anything critically. Whatever happens to them, they absorb, they imbibe and become that. So that is the natural learning. See, it's like this. Natural learning cannot be promoted. What it means is that natural learning is natural, because your eyes seeing something is not something. It's a conditional. No, you have eyes, so you see. You see, and the moment you are interested, you will see more. Then you pay more attention. Naturally, something begins to happen. So, see, for example, that when I mentioned that children learning 4 languages in Bangalore slums. They are learning because there is no what you call that, nobody teaching, nobody is promoting. They're just naturally paying attention to what is happening. They are not making any attempt to learn 4 languages. They are not in any competition. They are there in the context. 4 languages are being spoken. Naturally, they listen because the eyes are, the ears are open. It goes in, it gets organized, and it is given to you. Even organization of that input is done by our system without any effort. It's like digestion. You don't sit and digest your food, doing this, doing that. No, digestion happens on its own. What you can only do is decide what should be the input. So this also, to some extent, you can decide some input, Once the input has gone in, then processing is done by our system, actually. Now, what is the right age to go to? You see, actually, many of these things are very short-term kind of questions. We should, of course, I will answer. We should look at it in a much more reimaginative way. See, I feel that there are 2 ways to approach this. One, we should look at a very long-term kind of an approach. What should really happen? Second is that we should look at it like a repair job. that we know very well that it is fundamentally damaging. How to reduce the damage is what we can right now look at. Reduction of damage. No, so school is there. I mean, one option is don't send children to school. That's definitely there's an option, But otherwise, can we engage with schools to reimagine that? How do we reduce the damage? What is actually the potential of a child? So other questions are very, for example, now the promotion is play and toys, educational toys, that is fundamentally damaging. Children doesn't need toys at all, because children are exploring the real world through recreating various things, So in this recreation, they take any object. This mobile can become anything, actually. It can be a child. For example, you must have seen how children use their palm as a toy. This becomes a phone, na? So children require nothing. So in order to re-experience somebody making a call, if they don't get anything, they will just use their palm as a mobile phone, That's all. So children's imagination, their self-reliance, everything is being challenged the moment you give, of course, it actually kills the true cognitive process itself, So I've been actually talking about for young adults, what is really required is to think of a new foundation kind of a program, which can, see, I have been in the last few months, in this COVID time, I had to meet few Ayurvedic and, homeo physicians and all that. I can see that there is so much reduction in their quality because they have all become very allopathic in their approach, See, otherwise you meet a traditional Vaidya or a homeopath who has learned on his own, their ability to attend, to be observant, to be sensitive is very, very high order. Today, no, because that ability to be observant and sensitive is something that none of our educational, place has any place at all, actually. So what I'm trying to say is that there is a need for, a year or two program for reclaiming our foundation for learning, not for analysis, creation for foundation for learning. Exactly the way how children created their foundation based on senses, But in the older age, of course, you will have to go through a lot of deconditioning, deschooling, to rewire your brain and to give priority to your senses and your experience and not to the information that is fed in, Actually, intelligence, somebody is asking intelligence. Intelligence is a completely, again, misunderstood idea. Just remembering some silly things and doing some permutation combination, using somebody else's information is what is considered intelligent. Intelligence is nothing about this. Intelligence is your ability to create knowledge. That is what intelligence is. It encompasses creativity. See, I have not covered many other aspects like what is abstraction. How do actually children abstract? So this whole process, first of all, I don't think most educated people know what it means to create knowledge. That's the first thing. So creation of knowledge, that means how intelligently you adopt and understand things. So, see, I find today's tests are nothing but tests to make the tester feel more and more superior, I'll give you one simple example. Of course, now there is no scope for this. Otherwise, I would have given this as an exercise. I give a problem, which is to use a scale and a pencil, right? And a pencil to draw a circle, right? I have given to even MTech students, so it's not just KG, not just the 12th or first year, second year design students, even MTech master's students. They don't do it. I think the test of intelligence should be not to remember and repeat what they have, something that is actually challenging, that would take you, come out of your, your box. Think afresh. What is the right age to get children to academics? No, well, this is a typical question, but let me tell you that at least up to 12, 13 years, children should not be bombarded with silly theories, because that their foundation is getting formed. But that doesn't mean that they sit and do, they must have freedom, and they must have an environment of doing anything that they want to do. You see, there is one very important thing that we must remember, that freedom is an existential gift. Modern people have taken it over, and now they are giving bits and pieces of freedom to children. You go to any rural tribal area, freedom is existential. A child will never ask a parent permission to do anything. A parent will have never distrust the child. There is no unwanted concern about the child, which means they trust life, that life will take care of everything. So there is a very key problem here, that when you want to give, when I say for 13 years children should be free, which also means that there has to be a fantastic condition that enables learning to take place. For example, the children should see people doing things, not making somebody do something else, not reading books and things like that. Actual activity, do farming, do some repair work. You see, when we ran the school, for 3 years I ran that school. We called it reimagining schools. See, and we removed all the hierarchy from the school, headmistress and peon and all that kind of strange thing that we have now in our schools. No, we didn't have that. We found that children's heroes were the driver, and because the driver also could do all kinds of repair, or the ayahs, because they had far more life skills than people like us. We can only talk. But if you look at these people, any repair work, any carpentry, every activity this person could do. Naturally, children are drawn to these people. So when we say don't send children to school, which also means that there has to be a fantastic environment of existential freedom and the possibility of children making and doing things without the adult interference and no teaching, because that is a very key thing to understand, that children are equipped to self-correct. So when they do something, they know, this has not gone right, so they will do it. So children actually do not compete with others. Children compete with themselves, actually. There is always a self-correction, a feeling for refinement all the time with children, So if you don't interfere, and, that's what they will do, actually. No, reading book is not natural. See what I mean by this? I'll tell you one very interesting thing. In some of the workshops, some people, I've been conducting, offline workshops earlier. So those days, what is happening was that some people have told me that their ability was to look at the page and remember the whole thing. So they don't read line by line. You see? So these are two ways of seeing. Our natural seeing is to see, not line by line. When you look at somebody, you don't look at one eye, then the nose, then the mouth. That's not the way our eyes are functioning. Our eyes, the way eyes function is to look at the whole. That's the one, So if you don't interfere with children, if you don't teach them A, B, C, D, and line by line kind of nonsense, children might pick up the ability to text at one go, because that is the nature of the eye. So the eyes, so what we are actually now doing is, we are making eye the tool of the mind, rather than doing its physiological function. Its physiological function is to see, not to think. Now what is happening is that our senses are tools of the mind and not of the body. So reading and all these things require now a deeper revisiting of all this, and see how do we make all this text and computers and all that into a less harmful kind of a thing. that how do we take care of our mind that we become truly, see this, I am making fun of creative, critical thinking is that for how do you have critical thinking today? This is the question that I'm asking. Ultimately, it is all somebody else's thoughts. You have read 10 books about which now you're being critical. I find that kind of critical thinking absurd, actually. Unless you are an authentic person, there is no role for critical thinking. That you have seen something, that you have understood something. That should be the basis for any critical exploration, actually. So, yeah, this is all the, one thing that during my education time, I never knew that there was anything called, dropping out or, all that kind of stuff. But in fact, in 5 years, I did engineering. I only dropped out. All the 5 years, somewhat dropped out only. Hardly ever attended classes. It's so boring, actually. And but I took one decision by the time I left. One was never to do anything that I don't like to do. Second, never do a 9-to-5 labor job. Unless you are glued in, you really like what you're doing, don't enter into that. Well, I don't know how many people can choose these things, but there are opportunities like this that you can decide not to go to schools, not to go to classes, and create your own learning, But of course, that requires deep commitment, more resilience. You may not be able to buy your next car, as soon as you pass out, nothing like that. It will be a very different journey. So somebody is asking, do people need to recreate knowledge that has been created? You see, the biological principle is recreation of knowledge. When I say creation of knowledge, it doesn't mean that it's a new knowledge that I'm creating. I'm actually recreating knowledge. But that is how biology functions. So it's not something you have any choice about it, And also, if you actually look at from the context of modernity, what have we actually gained from any of the old knowledge? Number one, it has all made us into superstitious people. What we have done is that we have shifted from religious superstition to scientific superstition. This is all what we have done. We are believers of Newton and Einstein today. So there is a need for authenticity and a need for developing a creative mind. That doesn't mean that you have to recreate everything that everybody has created. That you must have a capacity, that you must be a creative person. Again, I want to make a very clear definition that creativity is nothing to do with art and all that kind of nonsense. Creativity is something that every child is involved in when they are, for example, when the child is crawling and climbing on a chair, it's being creative. Unless the father is also teaching the child how to climb on the chair by crawling. If that is happening, no. But otherwise, every act the child does is creative. So creativity is something that when you encounter what you do not know, that what you naturally do. So this is true for every subject that we are talking about. A scientist is a creative person. Every field requires this creativity. And our nature is that. So I think we shouldn't mechanize and make it into a mechanical kind of an object, this mind that we have. So the problem with engaging with ready-made knowledge primarily is that what are we doing with our brain? Why are we enabling our brain only to analyze somebody's information and to do? You see, another myth I want to break now is the notion that reasoning is a very good ability. Well, that is what is getting promoted left, right, and center. Reasoning ability. See, reasoning ability, you can only do when somebody gives you information. In fact, what hinders your creativity is your over reasoning mind, because you immediately want to, and what is reasoning basically? Reasoning is nothing but you are concluding something that somebody has given you. And what you do basically with reasoning, somebody has given you information. So you have two options to store it. Either you do rote learning and store it, or you organize that information and store it. So basically what we use reasoning is for storing information, second-hand information, for easy recall. That's all what we are doing. So we are unnecessarily promoting reasoning as a great skill. Reasoning is required very little. That too, we do have ability to reason. Otherwise, I wouldn't be speaking to you with clarity. That's because reasoning is something that is inherent in me. I'm not, making an effort to reason. So actually, integration means integration of reasoning and spontaneity. That's what a holistic person is. The moment you separate this, what you actually do is you kill spontaneity and you begin to use reason. Because spontaneity cannot, it's not manmarji. It's not, what you do is spontaneous. No, spontaneous is something that happens from you, not what you feel like doing. That's not spontaneity. Because today, that is what people think. What they feel like doing is spontaneity. No, that's not spontaneity. It is when you are not there, your ego is not functioning, spontaneity happens. When you're swimming, you're not planning and, doing that. When I'm speaking to you, I don't have that, planning preceding what I'm talking to you. Tell me. Current city life is a tragedy. City life is bad for children. Not only city life, so the way we have organized modern lifestyle altogether is extremely bad for children. Nuclear family is bad for children. You must live in a collective group of, as many people as possible, actually. Children should on a daily basis see different age groups and different things that happen in life, actually. See, I look at when I've been staying in villages, I see this very often that, a child, at least in a week, sees some death, some birth, some marriage. So they actually see life actually happening, Whereas in a city, today with one child, it's a worst decision to have one child, Because see, we are all taking economic decisions. We are not taking decisions that are life-centric decisions, what life demands. If you are concerned about children, then you look at what would the child like. Would they like to play with, some dog and cat, or they want more children around them? So I actually would say that 3 children are minimum. If you don't have children, that's fine. If you're worried about population, then don't have children. But if you want to have children, have 3. Or you at least you adopt 2, 3. At least that, But children should have more and more children around them, because adults should not play with children at all. This is another big tragedy that is happening today. Adults are now playing with children, because as I'm telling, these are 2 paradigms. You see, I remember a child asking something the child had, and he's asking, what is in my hand? And the father is getting angry, Whereas when 2 children do that, there's no conflict. Child immediately knows something to respond, So an adult and the adult is responding from a mind-centric way of doing, whereas when children are doing together, there is some other magic that is happening, When they point out, I remember a child explaining his experience, that these children were, sitting on a tree, and they were imagining that this was a ship that is going in the sea. And while going, they are telling, no, look, there is an island there, and every child is seeing it. So children have a fantastic way in which there's hardly any conflict. When somebody says this is a ship, they will not say that's an aeroplane, Somehow they come together and agree that, yeah, this is a ship, But these are things that adults can never, enter. The child's world is a different world. And it is children who can be with them, So the biggest danger is actually coming from the West regarding children, because they are promoting a new category of people called play workers. That's the most, then you killed everything that the child has. Play worker and toys are the two most dangerous things that can really kill childhood. Anyway, it will come in because anyway we are copying the West, left, right, and center. So welcome, play worker. That would be the end of childhood. But children need autonomy. That's the most important that they require. And that is one thing in our discussion about democracy, freedom, one thing we forget, and the most important thing is cognitive freedom. Without cognitive autonomy, there is no authentic learning. So it's all that there is some question.
There's in the comment section, Mani is asking, can creativity be inculcated later in life because schools have a fixed sort of a structure, and what sort of contribution does it make to the importance of the beginning years of life?
You see, creativity, inculcating creativity as it is being practiced today is wrong, because the very notion of creativity has a problem. Again, as I told you, it has been hijacked by art and design people, architecture and all that, and they have some strange notions about what is creativity. See, creativity, any authentic learning is a creative process. A true learner is a creative person, because a true learner always exists within the paradigm of unknown. Uncovering known and being in unknown is a constant process in which a true learner exists. A true learner will never believe what that person has understood. All understanding will be held as a possibility. The moment you think that you have understood, the story is over there. Then there is nothing more to explore. But that is not the way a true learner engages with, So these things will have to be understood from a very different. See, the problem is that most questions are coming from the old paradigm of how to teach children. So my answers are from the paradigm of how children learn and what should be the right kind of learning environment that we need. What we have left, right, and center is teaching environment. That is why so much dependence on experts and so much dependence on models. You see what is happening in the Western world? Experts everywhere, and so much dependence and methods being created. Montessori method is now left, right, and center being promoted everywhere. It's actually an absurd kind of idea. This senses can be compartmentalized in a natural process. All senses are functioning together. Now, you just take one example, eating a mango. All your senses are present. Every moment in your life, all your senses are functioning. Maybe in sometimes certain senses are functioning little more, some are less. But everything is ready to function kind of a situation. The moment you make that into compartments, like the Montessori methods, then you are creating a very artificial kind of a system in the child. That you attend to one, attend to the next one, linear. That absolutely is not the right way at all, actually.
Right, sir. I had a question of my own, if I may put forward.
Sure.
So when we talk about mimicry or learning from mimicry, or rather learning from observation or just being an observer of something happening around you. I mean, there are a lot of thoughts that come across and a lot of triggers that that make you want to do certain or take certain actions. Do you feel that the process of mimicry can also be identified differently in adults? Because I agree that we are trying to change how children are interacting with their environment, and the education model is there. But the people who are actually interacting at the end with the whole education model, the grown-ups, I would say, like, what about them, going back to the mimicry stage?
Yeah, actually, I wouldn't call it mimicry. What I would just call is that reawakening your.
Influencers back.
No, so what I was telling was that,
Yes.
you see, systematically, the damages of that 12 years of 12, 13, 14, however number of years that you've gone through should be addressed. And there are certain mental habits, cognitive habits that are wrong. There are certain physiological habits that has been, like habits, like left hand, you can only do one thing. Similarly, the brain is also a physical object. So there's a physical rewiring that has happened, which has created a habit of the way we engage with. So that all this would require, deep effort to get back our real functioning of, see, for example, concluding whatever others are saying is a habit that has happened with the modern mind. People do not know how to hold anything as a doubt. Either you agree or you disagree.
Right.
So this is a cognitive habit established by engaging with ready-made knowledge, because your option is only to agree with what the teacher said. So your brain is actually getting used to agreeing to what teacher says. This is all what you do. There is never, ever in the classroom a question being held at least for a half an hour. Normally for a learner, you constantly hold questions. That never get, fully concluded. So the ability to hold questions as a continuous basis is something that modern educated person doesn't have. So there are many, many such, and senses don't function at all. That's why modern educated people are all the time mentally absent. They're physically present, mentally absent all the time. They're never there. They're always busy thinking something, never present. So there are many such habits that needs to be got back. So that is why I feel a new kind of foundation program is required. If you really want to think of reimagining education as if we are able to create knowledge. If it is still about analyzing somebody's information, go ahead and continue this. But if it is about creation of knowledge, if it's about creation of authentic people, then a deep transformation is required. And I think design education has that potential because it actually satisfies many conditions that a child gets. Of course, we have to be less, authoritarian in our approach, which is very difficult because you see, this authoritarian approach is also something that we are not even aware of it. Because when you experience teaching in a school, what you imbibe is to be a teacher. Number one. Also, when you think you're an educated person, subconsciously, a feeling of superiority is embedded inside you. So two ways that this establishes your, strange psychological habit, So all these things has to be very consciously addressed and,